All right, so we're recording. You're welcome to go on camera. Just as a reminder, I'm given 5 points every day that you come on time and on camera. So if you want to get those extra credit points, go ahead and feel free to turn on your camera, and also feel free to turn on your microphone if you have a question. So welcome everybody. This is Spanish. No, I'm just teasing. This is Stats 1040. I will tell you that I think it was one of the first days I went to UVU, and I walked in the wrong classroom, and it was a Spanish classroom. So, but hopefully we won't be. We'll be learning all the fun vocabulary and statistics. So, Tori, are you in our classroom? You can nod or turn your microphone on. It looks like you are. Okay. Well, you're welcome. I'm glad you're there, even though you don't have to be there. You can tune in from there or from home. So just so you know, I might need a water here. When I taught this summer at I taught a trig class this summer. It was a 7-week class, and I had 3 of my 16 students test positive for COVID. And so I just said, I don't want to catch it myself. So I'm doing it from my home, as you can see. So, but I'm glad to see you all there. And sorry, I think I sent the email out early yesterday. Are you guys there just because you were already there? Is that why?
At least for me, it was just I didn't see the announcement.
Oh, you didn't see the announcement? Yeah, I sent out an email yesterday. I might have to get a drink of water here. Oh, I do have one. So anyway, you're welcome to meet from class or from anywhere else you want. So, all right, so just as a quick reminder, if you download Microsoft Teams, I notice we have a lot of guests today. When you log in as guest, then I have to admit you, but if you log in, then you can just join the room, and that makes getting into here a little bit easier. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people here. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. So we're going to go to the syllabus first, which is always the funnest part of the first day of class. I'm sure you guys enjoy it as much as I do. We'll just go along how we're going to do. So we're going to be meeting in Microsoft Teams. You're welcome to meet in LA 110, but I won't be there unless we can get over this darn pandemic. Class, mostly, I actually have another class. I think our class ends at 11:15. I have another class that starts at 11:30. So I can meet for a few minutes after class if you want to talk, or by appointment. This is my cell phone number, so if you want to text me, I'm actually teaching 3 statistics classes this semester. So don't tell me you're in my stats class. Everybody's in my stats class. So make sure you let me know which class you're in, the 11 a.m. or 10 a.m. or 11:30, or I have a 9 a.m. class as well. So prerequisite Math 1010. If you haven't passed the prerequisite, the math department will kick you out. So please check with the math department. I know Selena Patton knows who to talk to there. Probably you'll just have to take a placement exam to make sure you know your math. I know that expires every 2 years. So let's see what else. You can read all through this. Exams. we're going to, oh, they're not going to consist of a paper anymore. Actually, I forgot to update this. We're going to have exams on Proctorio. That reminds me, I need to set up a Proctorio quiz. Basically, you just need to download an extension and you have to use Google Chrome. Basically, here, I'll try to get on camera a little bit here for a second. The way it works is basically you'll have an online test. So basically, you'll show me that you've got some blank paper. After you work through it, you'll take a picture of each page. Let's pretend this is your test. And then you can upload that to Canvas, and then I will grade your work. Some of you I know have really bad camera phones. Please make sure that it's legible. Sometimes I get these tests and they're very hard to read. The test will be a combination of multiple choice and show your work. And so, you know, when you submit it, it may show you that you have 20%, but I'll grade it and hopefully it'll go up to 100% or whatever. So anyway, so those will be probably, I don't know, every 3 or 4 weeks or so. It kind of depends on how things go. So full credit's only going to be awarded if you can show your work. I'm not going to drop any exam scores, but you need to let me know if you're going to take an exam late. It's fairly easy for me to do that now. I don't have to rely on the testing center. The testing center is closed. By the way, I will update this to take this out of here. Because the testing center is closed, I won't be able to use that, so everything's going to be just, you can take it at home or whatever. Homework's important. One of the cool things about this class is we have an online book, and I'll show you that in just a minute. And so everybody has access to the book from day one. I did have a little trouble getting access to the homework yesterday, but I've finally gotten it. So homework problems are going to be similar to what you'll see on a test and the final exam. I will not collect homework. Oh, actually, I won't ask you how much you did because we actually have integrated homework in here. I guess I need to update my syllabus a little bit more. So I will update this after class. But in addition to the homework, we're going to have daily quiz questions. If you don't do the homework, you're going to really struggle. You can use any kind of a scientific calculator. I would prefer that you got a statistics calculator. I wouldn't spend more than $30. You can probably even get away with a $10 calculator. Can't use cell phone calculators, though, on any tests or quizzes. So, yeah, you can probably get, I think the TI-30 that's what most people get, and that's fine. Don't need a graphing calculator. So the way it works, exams are going to be 60% of your grade. The final exam is going to be 30. Your homework is going to be 5. Your quizzes are going to be 5 for a total of 10%. And then attendance up to 5% extra credit. So if you're on camera and on time, you'll get the full 5 points. And if you're late, then I'll take off a point or two as things go. So we will follow the standard grading scale. That's pretty typical. Final exam is going to be at 9 a.m. It'll be a little earlier. It'll be online anyway. So, but yeah, if you take it, I would hopefully, I'm going to follow the final exam schedule. So ours is scheduled for Tuesday, December 15th from 9 to 10:50 a.m. Don't cheat or I'll have to fail you for the class. The math lab. Those of you who I can see are in the class, if you walk upstairs 2 floors, you'll see the math lab. Have any of you been there? Is it even open? I don't even know if it's open. I have a feeling it's not. Do you guys know? It is open? You
It's
can
open.
turn on your mic. It is open?
Mm-hmm. My roommate works there and it's open. I think they have you can also log in online for questions still, but it's open.
Oh, okay. So this is from an old semester. I don't know if these hours are correct. That's just a guess, and I don't know how it'll work. But anyway, the rest of this I think you can read. Oh, I've got the wrong dates on there, the drop deadlines. I'll have to update that again. Anyway, I know the syllabus is always so much fun, and I need to update it apparently. So do you guys have any questions about how the class is going to work? I guess I will take that as a no. Brittany or Mallory, do your cameras work? Or who, I don't know who, Lexi? Okay. Anyway, yeah, feel free to interrupt me, ask any questions. There's Mallory. Welcome. Good to see you. All right, so we are going to cover chapter 8 for sure, maybe 9, we'll see. Oh, actually, before we do that, let me show you this. So as far as the book, let me show you how to access the book. So if you go to Macmillan Learning, you can click on Sapling. And you can kind of see here, here's your chapter 8, 9, and 10 homework. I've got due dates for those. So chapter 8 will definitely be due on Thursday, 9:55 a.m. So about 5 minutes before class. So the homework is due 5 minutes before class. I will also have a quiz that's due 5 minutes before class. The quiz will be on Canvas. To access the book, you can click on this right here. And I'm using a browser that doesn't have cookies. But anyway, so you've got some tables in here. I think over here you've got your table of contents. Normally, well, I always start on chapter 8 because normally in a regular class, I always try to introduce some computer stuff, and I can never get a computer lab on the first day. And so I always start with chapter 8, 9, and 10, because usually by then I can go to, I can figure out where I can get a computer lab. So anyway, we're going to talk about, so here's how you would access the book. We're going to talk about populations and samples, and so here's your book. There are some questions throughout here, but basically, if you go back to home, oh, well, maybe it's easier to just do it here, but you can see the chapter 8 homework right here, and basically you can have multiple attempts to do the homework. Here's number 1, and here, I'll show you that really quick. So select the best definition, and then you can choose which one of those is the right. I guess you have a little, I have a little view because I can remove the question, but anyway, so it's fantastic that you guys have the book on the first day. My other class, I know it takes a long time for sometimes people to get books, but you all have it, so that's fantastic. Is there a question here? Cody Lynn Perry, so it actually opens tomorrow. I don't know what that means. It will be open this semester. I don't know what Cody Lynn is talking about. The class starts today.
I just meant the math lab officially opens tomorrow.
Oh, the math lab opens tomorrow. Okay,
Yep.
okay. I didn't know what it was. Okay, the math lab opens tomorrow. Cool, glad to hear that. Any other comments or questions that you guys have for me? Looks like we're up to 12 people here now. All right. Okay, and now one other thing that I will just point out here, the first week of class, there's a lot of vocabulary, so I'll be doing a lot of talking, but usually I try to involve you guys, make sure you're not falling asleep. And so I'll probably pick on you, and I don't know is a perfectly acceptable answer, but it doesn't get you off the hook. That's usually where the teaching happens, and I talk, I give you some strategies on how to solve the problems and that sort of a thing. So anyway, Any questions about Canvas or about this, about the book? Okay. So there you have it. You'll definitely want to read the book. I've got some notes here that kind of shorthand of the book. But anyway, so we're going to talk about chapter 8. So basically the way it works is we're going to go 8, 9, and 10, and then we'll go back to chapter 1, and we'll go from there. I see a note here that somebody, I don't know why it did that. Huh. Anyway, maybe somebody's talking to me from my other class. Okay, so the field of statistics has its own vocabulary, and you will need to know all of these terms and how to apply them. So statistics, you can think of it as the science of data. Often it's more art than data. How we define things affects conclusions. Now let me give you a quick example on that. So I used to work, in fact, maybe we'll do our first little poll question here. I'll just, actually, let me mention one more thing. I noticed several people here are signed in as guest. I'm probably going to use the chat feature. If you're signed in as guest, I don't think you can give me a thumbs up. I'm going to give you a choice here in a minute. So it's better if you download Microsoft Teams and then you can use a thumbs up. You might have to just type in your answer here. It looks like there's only 3 of you there. But Microsoft Teams, it's free, and also you can join the class without having me have you join. So it just makes it a little bit easier. So anyway, so let me just mention this really quickly. So I used to work for a medical research company in Salt Lake, and we had a study. We were conducting a study on brain injuries. And one of the questions that we would ask was, how did the person get the brain injury? Was it a fall? Was it a car accident? Was it a football injury, boat accident? You know, we had a bunch of things. You know, there's lots of ways to get brain injuries. And so one of the things that we would ask was how they got it. And so I got a call. I'm trying to let Lori in here, and she's not. Oh, hopefully she got in. So I got a call from our Atlanta hospital, and you would think that that would be a simple question, right? How did you get the brain injury? And so she called me up and she says, I'm not sure how to classify this injury. Let me tell you what happened. So there was a person standing in the back of a pickup truck, and they were holding a mattress. And the pickup truck crashed, and the person fell out of the back of the pickup truck and hit their head on a rock. So I'm going to open up the chat window here, and I'm going to ask you, and this is the question, so pretend you're me, you have to answer this question. Would you classify this brain injury as a car wreck, or would you classify it as a fall because the person fell out of the truck? And so I'm going to put truck, or I'm going to put fall, or I'm going to put car wreck. Okay, and so you can just give me a thumbs up on my thing there. See, if you give me the thumbs up, it'll count, and then I won't have to scroll through. And I know a lot of you are writing fall, but if you thumbs up on there, it would be a lot easier. So most of you are going with fall, it looks like. See, let me show you. I'll show you. If you hover over where I put the thing, car wreck, you can go a thumbs up, okay? Like that. So most of you are saying fall. Oh, that's interesting. Usually I have more of a split decision. Has everybody voted? I know the guests, a lot of times you have to do it that way, but wow, I think everybody put fall except for me. Okay. That's interesting. Usually when I ask this question, usually it's more split. It's about half say fall, half say car wreck. So I said, gosh, I don't know. Let me go to the government. So here's the interesting thing. If you go to the government, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration says anything that involves a vehicle should be classified as a car wreck. If you go to OSHA, Occupational Safety and Hazard Administration, they say since the person fell, it becomes a fall. And so the point of the matter is you can do anything you want. It's your study. And so just you'll probably have to make that decision. So anyway, the point is a lot of things, a lot of things rely on definitions, and how you define things affects conclusions. In statistics, we define, organize, collect, summarize, and analyze information to draw conclusions or answer questions. We also say how confident we are in our findings, although often the news media leaves this out. They're getting better though. So here are some techniques that can be used for either observational studies or experiments, okay? So let's talk about bias. Bias means to systematically favor certain outcomes. Often bias is unintentional, sometimes it is not. Now let me give you another example here about bias, especially this being unintentional. So all of you, of course, are in school right at this moment. If I were to go to the mall instead of go to class today, who would be there, generally speaking? Can you describe the type of person who would be at a mall at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning? And feel free to unmute yourself, because otherwise I can see your lips moving and not hear. Got a talkative bunch. I'm going to have to start picking on you. How about Brittany? Brittany, can you describe who would be at a mall at this time of day?
I feel like maybe like a mom with younger kids that don't have school yet.
Okay. Elle, can you tell us who you think would be there? You're on mute. Can you unmute yourself?
Oh, I thought I did. Sorry. I would think that it would be like moms with a million returns that are trying to get out before their kids like come home from school, or moms with little kids, or maybe some old people just out and about.
Okay. So we got moms, we've got old people. Okay. Cody Lynn, let me ask you this. Okay, so we've got moms and old people at this time of day. What if I went at, say, 4 o'clock in the afternoon? Who would be there?
I think you'd get probably like high school students that have just gotten off school.
Exactly.
And I mean, you could probably still get moms and their kids if they need to get something for their children.
Right. Okay, so exactly right. So the idea here, when we talk about bias here, if I were to go to the mall, I would probably not intend to talk to only moms, or to talk to only old people, or to talk to only high school kids. And it would kind of depend on the time of day who would even be there, right? And so if I were to interview people there, I would be systematically favoring the opinions of moms, of old people, and perhaps of teenagers if I went maybe in the afternoon. And so usually when we talk about bias, it's usually unintentional. It's not that I'm purposely, well, maybe I am, maybe I purposely want to talk to moms, or maybe I purposely want to talk to old people. But the idea here is sometimes that I will systematically favor certain outcomes. Okay, and so when we talk about bias in this class, that's what we're talking about. Oh, the first week of class, I always talk a lot and then makes my throat hurt. All right, and I got something in my throat that's bugging me. Okay, the next term I want to talk about is population. Population is the entire group of individuals we want information on, okay? Now, typically, we don't survey an entire population. Typically, we'll just do a sample or a subset of the population. And usually we'll use this sample to draw conclusions about the whole, okay? So an example would be a Gallup opinion poll, and the variables are the responses. So generally, if you're, let's say the Gallup maybe they say that their target population is U.S. residents 18 and over, and they usually ask about 1,000 to 1,500 people. So those 1,000 people would be the sample, and maybe they'll talk to them by telephone. Lately, it's hard to even get a phone book anymore, and we're getting more into internet surveys and that sort of a thing. So an example would be the current population survey. It's kind of a famous survey. They sample 60,000 households every month, and they estimate the buying habits of 111 million households. Okay. I'm trying to see here. I keep seeing this 3, and I don't know if I have a question here. Oh, Sam answered. Okay, lots of moms and grandparents. Very good. Okay, so all right, now let's talk about some other terms. Parameter. Parameter is the true value. It's usually unknown, and it applies to the population. So P parameter, P population, those two terms go together. S is statistic. Statistic is a numerical summary of data. It applies to samples. And so S statistic goes with S sample, so parameter and population. Now, let me ask you all a question. Let's say I wanted to test light bulbs and I wanted to see how long the light bulb would last. So I'm going to test it until it burns out. Would it be a good idea to test every single light bulb in my population? Say I work for General Electric and I'm selling light bulbs. Would it be a good idea to test all my light bulbs? Let's pick on Lexi, because I can tell you guys are not a talkative bunch. We're going to have to make you talkative here. Lexi, what do you think?
I don't think it would be a good idea to test them all.
How come?
It would just waste all of them.
Yeah, they would all burn out, and then what would you sell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So typically, we're going to rely on samples. Especially in this case, a sample would be better because you wouldn't be able to sell any light bulbs. Okay. All right. Now let's talk about a simple random sample. So we're going to talk about some sampling techniques. So a sample of n individuals is chosen so that everyone has an equal chance of being chosen. Randomization can actually be very difficult. One researcher used the random number generator in Excel and discovered that the numbers picked were not actually random. They've actually changed their method now, and it's cool. But anyway, it would be nice to do a census, but typically censuses are costly. Here in the United States, of course, we talk about the national census. That's only done once every 10 years, and it is very, very costly. So what I would like to do here, let me show you something. If you go to announcements in our book, well, we've also got it here, but I've got this formula sheet for tests and quizzes. And so let me open this up. So this is a formula sheet. I'd ask you not to write on it. Go ahead and print this out. And these are going to be all the formulas. And we've also got a random number table here. And these can be used on tests and quizzes. So what I'd like to focus on here is the random number table, okay? And another thing that I would like to do here, in fact, maybe I should add this in here, is talk about a sampling frame. Okay. Sampling frame is a list of the entire population. Okay, and so let's do a quick example here. I think we actually got about 16 or 17 people in our class. We've only got 12 people here today, but we're going to pretend all 12 of you are our population, okay? So we're going to create a sampling frame, and what I'm going to do is we're going to ask a quick question here. So I'm going to assign everybody a number, and I'm just going to do it alphabetically since that's how you're listed. So Brittany, you are number 1. So remember your number. L is number 2. Cody Lynn is number 3. Lexi is number 4. Mallory is number 5. Olivia is number 6. Sam is number 7. Tori is number 8. Tyre is number 9. Zach is number 10. Now this is funny. It says we have 12, but I only see.
Mine cut out. What was mine again? Sam?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sam is 7.
You're just going down. Okay.
8, 9, 10. It says we have 12 people here. I'm 11. Who's the 12th person? That's weird. Guess I can't trust that. But anyway, so we've got 11 people here, really. Except for I've only really got 10 because I don't know who the 11th person is. Okay, so because we've got 10 people here, we've got 10 is a 2-digit number, okay? So I'm going to show you guys how to do a random sample. And so we're going to treat you guys as the thing here. So I'm going to go, let's pick line 11, okay? So I'm going to go every 2 digits. So I'm going to go 06. So I'm going to ask a question here. We're going to do this. We're going to ask a nice question like, who are you going to vote for? Are you going to vote for Biden or Trump? Okay. So number 6, who is number 6? Say your name.
Olivia.
Olivia. Are you going to vote for Biden or Trump?
Trump.
Trump, okay. And now we're going to go back here. So now we're going to go to 44. 44 we don't have, so we'll skip it. 76, skip. 58, skip. 90, skip. Oh, I got a 0, 0. I guess I could have started at 0, 0, but I didn't. I'm not going to call Olivia again because I already did. 30, 65, oh wow, 41. It's nicer when you have more people in the class. You don't have to skip so many numbers. 70, 96, 61, 44, 15, 03. Who is number 3? Say your name.
Cody.
Cody. Biden or Trump?
Trump.
You're voting for Trump as well. Okay. Let's go to the next number here. 95, 80. I guess we're going to have to go to the next line. 97, 12. I wish we had a 12. Number 2. Who's number 2?
Ellie.
Ellie. Oh, it's Ellie. It's not L, huh?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay. It's not like the magazine cover.
No, it's not. Sadly.
Okay. So, Ellie, who are you voting for?
Trump.
Trump. Okay. So we've got 3 people here. Okay. So I'm not going to keep going through this, but we'll keep going. And so I've actually surveyed already 30% of the class already. So anyway, that's how the random number table works. I will also mention here, if I can go back here, if we've got, if we go to the book, there should be a random number table in the book, although usually they will give you a list of numbers. So if I go to my book here, and I think, oh, we went to chapter 8. I go to the contents. Your table should be in the back, I think. Why don't I see it? They've got tables in here somewhere. It's funny because they popped up right at the beginning when I wasn't looking for them. Maybe it's here. Wow, that's weird. I know that there is some tables, but at any rate, usually when we're doing the, they'll probably give you the information you'll need anyway. So anyway, that's how you use a table. So on the tests and quizzes, I'll probably just ask you to use my table because it was a lot easier. Um, I'm going to quit wasting my time. But at any rate, okay. So sampling frame, that was a list of the entire population, so I just numbered you. Now, we could also do a convenience sample. Those would be easy to reach individuals. So an example would be go to the mall and ask people who will win the election. The question is this representative? And probably not, because remember, we're only talking to mothers or old people or, depending on the time of day, maybe high school students. So typically convenience samples are more likely to be biased, which means we're systematically favoring mothers in this case, or teenagers or old people. All right, the next thing we can talk about is a voluntary response sample, okay? These are often done in websites and news shows or call-in shows. So often people with strong feelings participate, but others don't. Now, you're probably all too young to remember Ann Landers. She had a sister named Dear Abby. They were newspaper advice column. You could write to Ann Landers or Dear Abby and say, hey, I have a question about whatever question you have. So Ann Landers once asked, if you had to do it over again, would you have children? She got 10,000 people to respond, and 70% responded no. So my question to you all is, do you think the Ann Landers sample is representative of all Americans?
I don't think so.
I would
Okay.
think so.
Yeah, why not? What would you expect the answer to be closer to be?
I think a lot more people would want to have families than than just 30%.
Yeah, if
Part of my
70% of the
belief
people,
there is
go ahead,
a lot
sorry.
of the people, my opinion is a lot of the people who, and this goes back to the Biden and Trump thing of like easy samples, is just a lot of the people who are spending all their time online, they're not, and like willing to write into those things, they're not really actively pursuing something worthwhile in their own life. And that's a general statement, so that's not necessarily fair to everybody who does it. But I think when you're involved with a family and you enjoy being with your kids and stuff, you're less likely to be spending your time on, say, like social media trying to respond to everybody else's polls.
Yeah. Well, Ann Landers was before social media even existed.
Yeah, I'm just saying kind of today's,
Yeah.
in today's society.
So yeah, my guess is she got a lot of people who had really crappy kids that treated them badly or whatever, and so probably she got a lot of people who were pretty jaded about children. So, oh, there it is, sampling frame. I should have introduced that sooner. There it is. I thought I'd put that in there. So that's a list of all the individuals in your population. Now, a stratified sample. This is another type of thing. So we talked about the simple random sample. A lot of times I abbreviate that SRS. So that's just where you just randomly choose people, kind of like I did. Now, the interesting thing was when I did my sample, I only talked to women, okay? And that's one of the things that can happen when you do a random sample. In a stratified sample, the idea is you could miss segments of the population. And in our case, I missed all of the men. Now, we don't have that many men in this class, do we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is Tyre? I think it's Tyre. Oh, so it looks like Zach and Sam are the only men in the class. We missed you. I didn't know that. So, wow, that's interesting. Usually this class has more females, but not that lopsided. That's kind of interesting, though. And so that was a perfect example of a random sampling missing segments of the population. Often we miss blacks, poor, women, or homeless. In our case, we miss the men. So to compensate, we can divide our sampling frame into distinct groups called strata. And then we can take a random sample within each group. Now, with our class being so small, that's going to be a little bit hard. But let's say, for example, so I've already done 3 women, but it looks like 4/5 of us are women. And so if I were to continue on with my poll, okay, maybe I should pick one of the 2 men. I probably should pick one more woman and one of the 2 men. And so I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Let's see. So Sam and Zach were the men. I'm going to pick you. Sam, you're going to be number 1, and Zach's going to be number 2. And then the women, we're going to redo our sampling frame. The women are going to be numbered 1 through 8. So Brittany's 1, Allie is 2, Cody's 3, Courtney's 4, Lexi's 5, Mallory's 6, Olivia's 7, Tori is 8. Is Tyre? I think that's a woman. I hope it is. Tyre, can you speak up? Are you a woman?
Yeah, and it's pronounced Tyra. You're good. Just
Tyra.
like the E.
Okay.
The E sounds like an A. I'm used to it.
Okay,
You're good.
Tyra Banks. Okay, there we go.
Yep.
You remember? I remember her. So, okay, so you're number 8. I think I said that right. So thank you for. I'm sorry I said your name wrong. Okay, so one of the things that we can do. I've already picked 4 women, so I'm going to pick one more woman. Now, because we've got single digits, if I go back to my, oh, did I close it already? I think it's open here. So I'm going to pick line 4 this time. No, I'm going to pick line 6. No, I'm going to pick, I'm going to pick line 17. Okay, line 17. Okay, I'm going to pick number 1 for the men, and I can't remember who was number 1 for the men. Was that you, Sam? Was that you?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, so Sam, we're going to pick you as part of our stratified sample. So you're the man vote. Trump or Biden?
I'd go for Trump.
Trump. And now, okay, now we're going to pick number 3. Did I already pick number 3? I think that was Ellie, didn't I? So I don't want to pick you again. We're going to pick number 4. Who was number 4 on the women? I can't remember after I renumbered you.
It's me, Courtney.
Courtney. Courtney, who do you want? Trump or Biden?
Trump.
Trump. I can't believe we've got so many Trump supporters in here. Okay, but the idea here is if I've got 80% women and I've got 20% men, and so this matches my my population, assuming that we have 10 people in here and 80% are women. So that would be an example of a stratified sample. Okay. All right. Now, so it would be nice to do a census, but it's usually costly. Obviously, in our class, this would be a piece of cake. Generally, stratified samples try to look like the population. We just gave you an example that looks like our population. But there can be reasons not to look like a population. So an example is, let's say that a large university has 30,000 students and 3,000 are graduate students. So a simple random sample of 500 gives every student the same chance of being selected. So 500 divided by 30,000 students would mean you would have a 1 in 60 chance of being selected. So we would expect the simple random sample to contain 50 graduate students because they make up about 10% of the population. So that's obviously 10% right there. So a sample size of 50 is generally too small to estimate the graduate students' opinions. And so, so if we had 50 students that were graduate students, we'd have 450 that were undergraduates. And so maybe we might want to prefer a sample that had 200 graduate students and 300 undergraduate students. And so therefore, the probability of being selected as a graduate student would be 1 out of 15, and the possibility of being selected as an undergraduate would be 1 out of 90. So the advantage to doing this is a lot of times we can a simple calculation for your margin of error is 1 divided by the square root of n. And so if I have 200, that's going to give me a margin of error of 7%. And if I have 300, that's going to give me a margin of error of 5.8%. And so the nice thing is, in fact, I should figure out really quickly what is 1 out of 50. 1 divided by 50. Oh, the square of n, square root of n. That would be a 14% margin of error. So I've been able, with the graduate students, you probably don't hear very often of a 14% margin of error, but I've been able to cut my margin of error for my graduate students, and my undergraduate is still okay. It's still pretty small. Okay, so there are times where we want, we purposely make our stratified sample not look like our population, because if we want to drill down, the 50 would be generally too small. So does that make sense? Okay. And by the way, Courtney, I give you extra credit for being on camera. Okay, so Sam, you asked a question. How do you handle it when there are people who won't say Biden or Trump? Is there a margin of error? Are you asking about people that would lie?
Well, I was looking at the people who, so for instance, in my family, my dad will vote for one person, but he often will vote for either party. Like it doesn't matter. And so to him, he doesn't really care. He votes for the person. And so he doesn't want to necessarily say, because he doesn't want to influence it. So I'm wondering about those people who just don't want to necessarily influence the poll, but are definitely going to vote one way or the other. Like, do we,
So well, you bring up an interesting point, because I don't know if you remember 4 years ago, who was supposed to win the election?
Yeah, it was supposed to be Hillary.
It was Hillary, right? Now, we're actually going to talk about that later on. The pollsters actually did an excellent job, and we're going to talk about why they didn't get it right. But there was a narrative going around that's saying, well, a lot of people lied to the pollsters, and they said they wanted to vote for Hillary when they didn't really want to vote. In reality, that's not true. We're going to talk about this when we get into confidence intervals. The reality is, in Florida, in Michigan, in Wisconsin, all of those polls, they had usually, a lot of polls have a 3% or a 5% margin of error. I could actually show you this. Here, we're going to give you a preview of our, see if I can find this. So then it'll make them a little bit more sense. Okay, here we go. I think this is the one I want. I stayed up way too late on election night 4 years ago, but it was really cool because this graph here was taken from CNN or NBC? I don't remember, one of the two. But at any rate, you only need 270 votes to win, and Hillary was already at 268 according to this, and Trump was at 204, and there were 66 battlegrounds. Now, as we look at it, this is getting into confidence intervals. I'll probably show you this again when we get there. But they only missed on 4 states, okay? And as you look at it, the forecast in Florida, for example, was 48.1 to 47.5. So Clinton was leading by 0.5%. So that's within the margin of error. So the fact that Trump won and the actual results were, so Hillary was 48.1% of the vote. She got 47.7, which is very close. That's easily within the margin of error. The problem was, notice these 48 and 47 don't add up to 100. And so we've got, what is that? 48 and 47 is 93, 98 and 750. So that only adds up to 95. So 5% of people were undecided. Those undecideds actually went more for Trump than they did for Clinton. So you can see in the forecast was 47.5 for Trump, and he got 49.1. So he outperformed the poll. And the problem is these 29 votes, instead of going, we can subtract those from Hillary and add those to Trump, okay? So it's not a one-to-one correspondence. And so these 4 states here, Florida, Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, all predicted Clinton to win, and actually Trump won. And those 4 states were what made Trump the winner. So you ask a good question, Sam, and I don't want to get too tied down in the weeds here. There's two questions. Number one is, are people lying to pollsters? That's a big issue. And there's not a lot that pollsters can do. If somebody lies to you and say, I'm going to vote for Clinton, and then he turns around and votes for Trump, I can't help. Hopefully people don't lie to you. That is a problem with polls. And that's what a lot of people said happened. The reality is, though, this is so close, it's hard to predict who's going to win. The reality is there were some undecided voters, and the undecideds did vote for Trump. And so this is really the sort of thing that happened, was people were undecided when they did this. So polling is incredibly difficult. And I should also add here, when we talk about randomization, true randomization can be extremely difficult. And I'll give you an example. So I took a class at the University of Utah, and we talked about randomization. So the guy who taught the class was from Washington State. And he wanted to find out how much lead was in a can of tuna. Tuna fish eat lead, and then it gets into their body, and then we eat the fish. And so he wanted to know how much lead was in a can of tuna fish. And so he wanted to randomly pick cans of tuna fish. Okay. Now, I'm not familiar with all the cities in Washington, so I'm going to change this to Utah. So if you were to go to if you wanted to pick a random can, here's how you would actually do it, okay? First of all, you'd need a list of all the cities in the state of Utah. So Ogden, Salt Lake, Provo, American Fork, Spanish Fork, La Verkin, St. George, Hilldale, whatever, Levan, you'd name all the cities, okay? So the idea is you would randomly pick a city, okay? So let's say I pick Kaysville. So I randomly pick Kaysville. Now, where can you buy tuna fish? You can buy it at Albertsons, Smith's, Bowman's, Skaggs Alpha Beta, Target, Walmart. There's lots of places. And so okay, you randomly pick Kaysville, you randomly pick Bowman's. Okay, now you need to randomly pick a brand. Well, what are the brands of tuna fish? You've got Chicken of the Sea, you've got Starkist, you've got the store brand, you've got Western Family. Okay, so now you randomly pick Kaysville, you randomly pick Bowman's, you've randomly picked Starkist, and now tuna fish comes in oil and in water. So now you have to randomly pick that. So now you've got to randomly pick, oil, let's say. Okay, so randomization, if you're going to do it right, can actually be very difficult. Okay, so that leads to some other types of random samples. One way, kind of a fake random, is to do a systematic sample where you select every case individual, okay? It's useful because it doesn't require a list of each individual like a simple random sample does. And so what you could do is you could randomly just pick every 3rd can of tuna fish, or something like that, or every 5th can, or every 2nd can, or whatever. And so you can think of a systematic sample as a pseudo random sample. Okay, so that's another type of sampling technique. Another is called a cluster sample. Okay, and the idea, so a lot of people, we've talked about stratified. A lot of people get stratified and cluster mixed up. Okay, now let's just review stratified really quick. So in a stratified sample, you're going to divide into sampling groups called strata, and then you're going to take a simple random sample within the strata. So in our example, I randomly picked 4 women and I randomly picked 1 man. So with a cluster is where you select all the individuals of a selected collection or a group of individuals. So some examples. A school administrator wants to learn the characteristics of an online class. Rather than obtaining a simple random sample of all students in the class, he could treat each class as a cluster, and then he obtains a simple random sample of these clusters. And then the administrator surveys all of the students in the cluster. So for example, let's say, for example, I wanted to, there were 40 English classes at Utah Valley University. So maybe I would randomly pick 3 of those classes, and then I would talk to everybody in each of those 3 classes. So you could think of it like here, where maybe I would talk to everybody in the class, and that would be a cluster. So each class would be a cluster. So does that make sense? How that's different than a stratified sample? Yes, no, maybe. I'm getting a few head nods. Okay. All right. So all right. So there was going to be some questions on the homework that will tell you whether to identify a cluster sample or a systematic sample or whatever. Another example here, a sociologist gathers data on household income in Boston. She breaks the city into blocks and then randomly selects the blocks and talks to everybody on that block. So that would be another example of a cluster sample. Okay. All right, convenience sample. Convenience sample are easy to reach individuals. They're very convenient. So you could go to the mall and you could ask people who will win the election. Now the question is that representative? We've kind of talked a little bit about that before. Probably not, because you're going to be getting a lot of people that are, mothers or old people or younger people, okay? Voluntary response sample, we kind of talked about this already. Did I put that in my notes twice? Oh, I did. Sorry, that's in there twice. Okay, so we've already talked about that. Multi-stage sampling is a combination of previous methods. And so maybe you'll combine a cluster with a systematic with a stratified sample or something. Sample size, obviously we want the largest sample possible. This reduces bias. However, this always has to be balanced against cost. So at this point, I usually break people into groups, but it's hard to do that when you're all in the same group here. So do you guys have any questions for me on sampling types? Okay. I'm trying to decide if we should start on chapter 9. We've only got 15 minutes left. I think I'm going to save that for next time. So, normally, like I said, I'd have you guys do this. Do you guys feel comfortable figuring out the random sample using the table? Okay. All right, that's usually the biggest question that students have. So, all right, well, I'm going to let you guys out about 15 minutes early today. So what I would recommend is go ahead and read chapter 8. You've got the book online, so you don't need to buy a book. That's awesome. Do the homework for chapter 8. It's due 5 minutes before class on Thursday. I've also got a quiz that I'm going to post online on Canvas. That will also, so you basically every day you'll have two things due. You'll have homework due, and you'll have the Canvas quiz that will be due. Oh, actually, I'm going to give you a third quiz. I forgot about that. Proctorio. So all the tests are going to be online, and so if you haven't taken a math test before, math usually, well, some of you have, some of you haven't, you need to download an extension. You have to use Google Chrome, and there's an extension called Proctorio. Basically, I'm going to give you a 1-question quiz, and the question is, can you see this problem? Or I can see this problem. It will be true or false. If it asks you for a password, that means that Proctorio is not installed correctly. And so you should just get a question. I can see the question. Yes, I can see it. So it's just going to be an easy 1-question quiz, and that will just verify that you have the software installed, so that when we take the test, it'll probably be 3 or 4 weeks that you'll be able to take the test. So 3 things: Proctorio quiz, homework, and Canvas quiz on Chapter 8. So do you guys have any questions for me?
When is the Canvas quiz due?
It will also be due 5 minutes before class on Thursday.
Okay.
So basically, you'll have 3 things due this week, but normally you'll just have 2. So, any other questions?
Can you remind me how to get to the book? I can get to the homework and the assignments, but I can't remember how to get to the book.
So I'll show you how to get to the book here really quickly. Okay, so if you go here to, in fact, let me show you, if you found the assignments, let me close this too. So I think you can get there from the homework. So it's Chapter 8 homework. So you load it in a new window. And these are the questions which you can do. If you click back on either here on Sapling Learning or here on Sapling Learning, either way. Oh, don't do that. Click on that one. Oh, we're section 3. Here, let me do this one more time. I just want to make sure that I'm not steering you wrong. Macmillan Learning is probably the easiest way. If you click on Sapling, that should take you to here. And then over here on the right side, it looks like kind of a weird thumb point thing. That's where you get the book.
Okay.
And so it sure takes a long time to load, though. And then you can go to the table of contents. We're starting in Chapter 8, which is under Part 2, sampling techniques. And so there you go. Okay. A couple other things that I just want to point out really quickly. Announcements. I've got your virtual classroom. So just click. I know this has this Microsoft Teams thing, but it creates a new link every time, and it's just easier just to click on this link every time, and it'll take you to the same place, and it's just the same place every time. If you want to bookmark it, that's fine. Also, I've got your formulas that you can use for tests and quizzes. That's right here, so you'll probably want to print that out. And then your assignments. So typically, actually, if I go to home, typically you'll see here, Chapter 8 homework, Chapter 8 quiz. I'm going to add a Proctorio quiz. I haven't added, I forgot to do that, but I'm going to add that right now. So it'll be just a 1-question quiz. So any other questions that you guys have?
If we have questions on the homework or like anything we're reading in the chapters, what's the best way to ask questions?
So here's what I would recommend. Couple things. You can text me. My phone number is in the syllabus. If you have a question, you can text me. If it's an emergency, use the email in Canvas. I usually check that a few times a day. Usually early in the mornings when I check it. And then I would also recommend, you guys are welcome to use this virtual classroom. In my trig class, there was a guy, and they would always meet immediately after class. Now, you can meet, if you want to stick around and just kind of have a little study group for about a half hour, I have another class at 11:30. It's actually the same class. So if you want to listen to the lecture a second time, once wasn't enough, you can hear it again at 11:30. I will also post, if you go to the chat here in, you can see where people have been posting stuff. The video will be here a few minutes after class. I will also post it to YouTube and you can watch the video again on YouTube if you'd prefer. And then, yeah, so if you have an emergency, go ahead and text me. Say, I'm Courtney, I'm in your 10 o'clock class, and ask your question, then I can do that too. But I would also recommend, studying in groups is often helpful. And if you want to stick around, that's great. That's a good idea. And you can also use this, just so you know my schedule. I have a class at 9, I have a class at 10, I have a class at 11:30. Outside of my 11:30 goes till about 12:45. So outside of that, you're welcome to use this class anytime you want. So if you want to meet at 7 o'clock tonight and get together with a group, that's a good idea. I would recommend that. So, any other questions? Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop recording. And it was great, and I will see you all on Thursday.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I'll stick around for a minute if you want to ask me any questions off camera.